What are the most common mistakes when forming an LLC?
One of the most common mistakes people make starting an LLC is they try to do it themselves. When you go through the process, they say, well, I don't want to pay all this money. And I say all this money. You're talking like a couple $100s. But they say, I don't want to pay all this money to have a registered agent do this on my behalf, or a company formation service do this on my behalf. I don't need to pay this registered agent fee, of $100 or $200 a year. That's just a waste of money. Well, being short-sighted, naive, and that is a huge mistake to do it yourself. Number one, technically, anybody can go on the Secretary of State website and fill in the blanks and fill in the forms. There are options on how to file some of your various options. You can make mistakes there, and oftentimes you do make mistakes if you don't do it, if you're not used to doing it, and you're not doing this thing day in and day out, and you know all the various tips and tricks, so to speak, on registering it. And one of those biggest mistakes is being your own registered agent. For example, you want to register an LLC in, let's say, Florida, for example, and you're like, well, I live in Florida. I'll just use my home address for that registered agent address. Well, the moment you do that in the Secretary of State database, which is public record forever, because it can't be taken out anymore, ever, your name and your home address is forever associated with that entity. So I'll give you an example there. I had a client who got sued, had a Florida LLC. The lawyer suing him went to the Secretary of State's website. They didn't know who owned the LLC, by the way. They were suing the LLC. But when they went to the Secretary of State's website, they saw this guy's name and they found his home address. So the lawyer then added him as an additional party in the lawsuit as owner of the entity, of the company. And so then he started having process servers harassing him at home, knocking on his door, stressing his family out. His wife was going crazy, all because he didn't want to spend an extra $100 or $200 a year to have a registered agent on file. Because that's what a registered agent does. They provide a registered business address for your company so that if you get any official mail or what they call SOP mail, service of process mail, the registered agent is the one that signs for that. But even if you have your own office and you say, I'm going to use my office address for that instead of my home address, okay? But you still have the same issue. If you ever get sued, the process servers are coming and talking to your employees. I personally would not want my employees to know we were being sued by somebody. I'd rather handle that without stressing out my employees. As an experienced business owner, it doesn't stress me out if I get sued. It doesn't bother me. Like, I know it's just one of the things that happens, and it's one of those things we do business. To do business, it's going to happen. But your receptionist or an admin person that sits at the front of your office that doesn't understand business, they could get really stressed about a situation like that and think, oh my God, we're going out of business. We're getting sued. They could quit. I think it's really short-sighted to not use a registered agent because you don't want that. You don't want that in your business coming to your office or coming to your house. And if you ever get sued, and if you're in business more than about 5 minutes in the U.S., you're going to get sued. I think it's just really cheap insurance to keep that kind of at bay, to keep it away from your family and your people. But also, like in the example with my client that had that LLC, he registered himself in Florida. He was named personally in that lawsuit. They came after him and the company together, and he lost. He had to pay out pretty hefty sum of money to settle that thing. I mean, it wasn't in the millions, but it was in the upper six figures. If he would have had it where he had a registered agent in place and his name and home address wasn't in there, they would have only gone after the company. He has a lot more options at that point. But once he was named personally, that means they can come after him personally and his personal assets also. It put him under such a lot more stress with him and his family. He chose to settle it. Whereas if it was only in the company name, you have a lot more options. Maybe if it's a company that's like some frivolous lawsuit and it's a company that doesn't own any assets, close the company down, start another one. You can dismiss it basically. Like, you have a lot more options in that case. Or you at least get a bit more negotiating leverage with your claimant when you go to try to settle it, because you don't have so much at risk personally if you're not named personally in the lawsuit. I think that's a massive mistake people make, is being their own registered agent. I think them filling out the forms and doing it themselves on the Secretary of State website is also a big mistake because there's so many variables in there when registering it. You can make mistakes there that expose you later on down the road, because we get a lot where people come to us, and this is very common, but people up front in the beginning of their business, they don't have much money. They're starting it on a really small budget. They're like, hey, I've only got I barely have enough money to get this thing started. So I'm going to do it myself. And then a lot of times what they'll do is they come to us after 4, 5, 6 years, 10 years in business, but they don't come to us preemptively. They come to us after there's a problem, after they've had a major litigation event or something like that, to fix the problems they created when they started the business themselves. I mean, I've seen that hundreds and hundreds of times. To be honest, there's really nothing we can do to fix the problem they created, because that problem is already there. We can restructure their business to make it better going forward, but I can't do anything about an existing problem. If we did anything like that, there can be potential criminal implications for the client with fraudulent conveyance and that sort of thing. Doing it right the first time, in my opinion, it's kind of cheap insurance to save yourself a major headache down the road. That would be the bigger mistakes I see.
If you'd like Business Anywhere to help you create an LLC, use the link in the description below and enter the code BEGIN15 at checkout to save 15%, excluding the state fees. If you'd like to see the step-by-step process of creating an LLC with Business Anywhere, watch this video right here, and I hope to see you in another video. Bye-bye.